Let's take out our Bibles and learn together. Usually, I try not to comment on political and government things that are taking place in Israel. The exception is if it has clear biblical ramifications, meaning something that is clearly prophetic that's going on. But because of the number of emails that we are receiving, and I'm talking about what many people are calling a crisis in Israel that may lead to a civil war and bloodshed, and even a dictatorship being established. Now, the reason probably that I'm getting so many emails is because of what people are seeing in the international media and also the media here in Israel as well. And let me simply say that there is a clear political agenda taking place here. And that is being led by the media internationally and here in Israel, which tends to be extremely left-leaning, meaning simply that they tend to be those who promote a political agenda that is far away from the truth of the biblical concept of righteousness and justice. So when you look at what the international media is saying and the media here in Israel, you get a very different presentation than I would call the reality of the situation. And here's the tragic thing. We see that believers are falling into this deceit, meaning this. They are being deceived in believing something that is not going on. Now, I received an email not too long ago from another organization based in Israel. Now, you would think because they are based in Israel that they would have a good understanding of what's going on. But in my opinion, I believe that they are doing nothing more than repeating a left-wing media presentation that does not at all represent the truth. Now, it's not my purpose to point fingers by name against this organization. I know many of the people, I think they're good people, but their views and what they're saying is simply not a factual representation of what's going on here. What I received from this organization is called a prayer alert. And this is what they say. We are currently witnessing a concerning situation in Israel as tension rises and there's a growing fear of a potential civil war. Let me simply state, there is not going to be a civil war in Israel. It's not going to happen. Yes, there are strong differences in the political views. There is in every country between those who are right-leaning and those who are left-leaning. But I do not see any possibility whatsoever that there's going to be a civil war in Israel like we saw, for example, in America in the 19th century. It's simply not going to happen. One of the issues that is exasperating the situation is the absence of a constitution, which leaves the country without a clear and solid framework for governance. Totally false. Now, is there a constitution? There is not. And the reason why there's not is because many people feel that we have a constitution. It's called the Torah. And we should not replace what God gave to Israel as a way of governing the nation with a work of man. Now, I do not believe in any way, shape, or form what we see here when it says the absence of a constitution leaves the country without a clear and solid framework for governance. Really? Israel is 75 years old. Things have been governed, and I would say, as countries go in comparison, Israel's democracy has done a great job governing. So I don't know what they mean by saying that there is an absence of a means to govern the country in a solid framework. I totally reject that. Secondly, it says this: at present, the Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox, now really there's just simply Orthodox. There's no ultra-Orthodox. There are people that are more stringent, but I don't like that term ultra-Orthodox. But let's see what it says. At present, the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox factions hold a significant control over the Parliament House and the government. No, they are there, they are represented, but I do not believe that it's proper to say that the Orthodox hold control over the Parliament. They have influence, but you know what? Is it possible to state with facts that the Orthodox hold a greater influence in the Knesset and the Parliament than those who are secular? Absolutely not. We see that the secular, although they are not the controlling majority of the government leadership, there is a significant portion of the liberal, the left wing, the secular within the Knesset. In fact, I would argue that even among the right wing, many of those who are right wing are not Orthodox. For example, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He is right wing most of the time, but certainly he's not Orthodox. He is secular, and many in his party and other parties that support his coalition are not Orthodox. So this is simply a false statement. It says as well, they have been passing new laws. Well, there are some desires to pass some new laws, but I would argue that we haven't seen any significant laws pass and come into force. In fact, what this is all about, and let's get to the heart of the matter, what this is all about is a law that is being proposed, which does something. Right now, and many of you can understand this, Israel is a democracy. And a democracy has to do with those who are elected by the people. And they represent the people in the parliament. And this is a great way to govern. And what's happening is this: because the people vote for a more right-wing government, the left-wing people don't like that. And what do? Well, instead of winning elections and sharing their thoughts in a way that can build a coalition, that can govern, what do? Here's the issue. They rely upon the Israeli Supreme Court in order to put down what those who are elected by the people, what they vote on. And therefore, I would say this: those who are saying that we are in a crisis and that Israel's democracy is at risk, I would say no strongly to that. Why? Because what the new proposed law is about is giving power to the people, to those whom they elect, in order to not have to always have the Supreme Court coming in and saying, well, even though the parliament, those who are elected, want, for example, the homes of terrorists to be destroyed, and the Supreme Court comes in and says, no, you can't do that. The Supreme Court, in my opinion, has taken a soft position on terrorism. And secondly, the Israeli Supreme Court has promoted a very left-wing political agenda that includes homosexuality, that includes things that biblically, according to the law of Moses, are incorrect, are wrong, go against what's best for a society. So I am not in favor of the Israeli Supreme Court overruling what the people desire and what they elect their members of the Knesset to do. So I simply see that this is not at all an accurate representation. And then something else, and here again, do we really think that Benjamin Netanyahu, you may be a fan of his, you may not? I will tell you something. There are things that he has done that I have liked. There are things that he has done that I have not liked. I think that when he runs for his position as the leader of his party, and therefore, if successful, will be the prime minister, when he runs for that position, I tend to like him. And when he gets into office, he tends, in my opinion, to move more to the center. But do we really believe that he wants to be the dictator? I strongly reject any thought that Netanyahu wants to be a dictator. This is not something that I would in all agree with. That is false. And what is this group doing that's supposed to be believers? They are simply echoing the left-wing media. When it says this, they have been passing new laws that consolidate government power. No, and no, it doesn't consolidate government power. The power always was supposed to rest in the Knesset, in the elected officials. And the Supreme Court, which is appointed, it's not like in, for example, in America, where elections are supposed to matter and the president appoints the Supreme Court justices. This is not done. The justices come from within. And this is not good, in my opinion, because it allows the Supreme Court to continue to be left-leaning, to be very, very liberal, and elections don't change the makeup of the court. It says here that they have been passing new laws, I disagree with that consolidate government power, disagree with that, and raising concerns that this could lead to a move for a dictatorship that disregards human rights. I strongly reject the fact that the Likud party, the leading party in the Knesset, wants to establish a dictatorship and is moving against human rights. In fact, what I would say is this: it's the left that is moving towards limiting human rights and freedoms and justice, not the right, but rather it is the left that are doing this. Well, let's move forward. It says, in the past, the Supreme Court has played a crucial role in upholding human rights and ensuring government decisions and new laws align with the principles of justice. I don't believe that at all. I think the Israeli Supreme Court has been way too far left and have not had a view of justice that is in line with the scripture, but their idea of justice is the same justice that we see in the European Union and in the current administrations in the United States. A very left-leaning government that does not at all represent the standards of the Holy Scriptures. However, there are fears that these checks and balances may be weakened or even eliminated, leaving citizens vulnerable to potential human rights violations and international legal repercussions. Here again, this is simply taken from the talking points of the international media. I do not believe that it represents a factual presentation of what's going on in Israel. It's essential, I'm reading again from this prayer alert, it is essential to remember that Israel is founded on democratic principles. That means that your vote matters. That means that those who receive a seat in the Knesset are the ones who make the laws. And Israel's different. It was not the intent of the Supreme Court to always question those laws. The people, through their votes, are able to vote people in, vote people out based upon their performances. Now, again, we need to realize that historically, at the beginning of Israel's existence, the modern state of Israel, the Supreme Court didn't get into these issues, but recently they have. And it's simply because they don't like how the people vote. And the Supreme Court has been used as a pawn of the left in order to try to hinder the people's vote. who the people vote for, and the policies that the people vote for. So, in my opinion, what we see here is, in this so-called prayer alert, is a totally false representation of what's going on. Israel is not moving to a dictatorship. Israel's not moving to a civil war. Israel is not moving towards a place where human rights are going to be eradicated by the right. This is simply not what's going on. What we see today is that it's the left and those who are protesting that are going against the law. And what are they doing? They are closing roads so you can't travel. They are going to airports, the main airport in Israel, and blocking the entrance into it. They are causing a disruption, and these disruptions are illegal. Yes, I know that the Israeli police head has said we're moving towards bloodshed. Well, again, my feelings is this. We have been in Tel Aviv. We have had to go through the places where there's demonstrations on the way to a doctor's appointment for my wife, and we have seen very peaceful demonstrations. And here in Ashdod, where we live as well, very orderly. People gather. It's fine for them to have a protest, but blocking the airport, blocking roads, being an interruption, doing which protesting is not supposed to do, is not appropriate. We can agree to disagree with whether the law that's being presented is good or not. That's fine. We can protest in favor or against. That's fine. But when we cause others not to be able to travel, not be able to go to the airport, not to be able to drive to a doctor's appointment because that main road to take you there has been closed, this is inappropriate behavior, and it's the left that have done that. Let me say to you, before this recent government was put into power by the people, there was a more left government. And during that time, we didn't see those on the right demonstrate. We didn't see those on the right close roads and close the airport. What we saw was simply a sharing of ideas in order to speak to the people, in order to lay out what they would do if they were entrusted with the political power again. So don't believe the international media. I'll say to myself, who lives in Israel, don't believe the Israeli media. There is a false presentation of what is going on in Israel. It's simply the left using the Supreme Court in order to stop the democratic process whereby the people who have been elected, they are trying to make laws and govern. So it's the left that's really accusing the right of doing what they themselves are doing. I hope this short video helps and clarifies the situation in Israel. I would certainly not call it a crisis, and there's not going to be a civil war, and Benjamin Netanyahu is not trying to be the dictator of Israel. These things I assure you. Well, I'll close with that. Shalom from Israel.